Hey guys, it's your friend Kobe here, and have you ever wondered whether you should rent or buy a house? After all, housing prices are starting to come down from 2022's craziness, but interest rates are going up, so that actually inflates your monthly payment. You've probably heard that it's always financially best practice to buy a home, and that renting is just throwing money away. But is that actually true? Well, I've sat down and compiled the times when it makes sense to rent and times when it makes sense to buy. So, if you're wondering if you should rent or buy a house, this is for you. Let's start with when to rent. Despite what you may hear, sometimes it's a better idea to rent than buy a property. This depends on a few things, mainly on how long you're planning on staying in the area, what you can afford, and what kind of debt you have. First, let's talk about how long you're planning on staying in the area. If you're not planning on staying in an area for more than 5 to 6 years, it's probably a better idea to rent a home than to buy one. This is because when you buy a house, you end up paying a lot to get a mortgage loan, cover closing costs, and pay for upkeep and repairs. And so you'll want to sell the home at a certain level above what you bought it for, or have enough equity in the home to break even on those extra closing costs. On average, it takes about 5 years to sell the house for enough to break even or have enough equity to break even on those extra closing costs. Now, in some areas where the market is crazy, you may be able to buy a house and then turn around and sell in 2 years afterwards and make enough to break even or even make a hefty profit. But on average, it takes about 5 years. Chances are, if you sell the house before 5 years, you'll lose money due to those extra costs that come with buying a house. Instead, if you think you'll stay in an area for less than 5 years, renting gives you flexibility and lets you avoid those extra costs and insulates you from potential risk of losing money. Another aspect of this is if you know that your employer could transfer you at any time, you may want to rent because in addition to avoiding the costs with buying a home, it's typically a lot easier to get out of a rental contract than it is to sell a house. Second, renting may be a better option because it's what you can afford. Now, I'm not talking about a mortgage payment versus rent. I'm talking about the monetary and time costs it takes to own a home. If your water heater breaks or if your roof needs to be redone and you're renting, those costs aren't on your head. But if you buy a home and anything like that happens, you're the one responsible for it. These types of repairs and home maintenances can be quite costly in both a monetary sense and a time sense. If you're gone all the time, travel a lot, or are just super busy with work, you may not have the necessary time to maintain a property. In addition to this, maybe you just can't afford a house payment. For example, a good rule of thumb is to make sure that your housing payment, whether it be rent or a mortgage, is no more than 25% of your income. If there are options for renting that fit into this percentage and not options for buying in that percentage, renting may be the way to go. Another factor is that the interest you'll pay on a home mortgage may not be worth it. If you qualify for a mortgage but have a very low credit score, the interest you may pay on that mortgage could cost you so much that it may not even make sense to buy a home. Instead, you may choose to rent while you work on improving your credit score to get a better interest rate. Or if the economy is like it is right now and interest rates are really high, it may be worth renting for another year or two until rates fall. A third reason why you may want to rent instead of buy is if you have a lot of debt, specifically consumer debt. This is because consumer debt tends to carry high interest rates, and so paying it off is a much bigger financial priority than saving for a down payment. Consumer debt is any kind of debt that is owed as a result of purchasing goods that are used for individual or household consumption. This includes credit card debt, student loans, car loans, or payday loans. In addition to costing a lot because of high interest, having a lot of consumer debt can make it difficult to keep up with payments. And so adding yet another debt to your balance in the form of a mortgage can make your life even more stressful and much less flexible. If you're working on paying off your consumer debt, it may be a good idea to focus on that and just rent a place for now. Still not convinced that it's sometimes a better idea to rent than to buy? Here's an example. I have a friend who will be moving to a new state this summer for graduate school. She and her husband are planning on staying there for about 5 years, but they don't want to live there forever. There's also a possibility that they will need to move after just 2 years. They don't have any consumer debt, but are planning on taking out a small loan to help pay for their graduate school. In addition, there are a lot more options for renting at reasonable prices than there are for buying a home. Because of all these factors, my friend and her husband decided they would want to rent a home instead of buying one. That way they have the flexibility to move if they need to and won't be stressing out about paying for a mortgage payment that they can't afford, and can focus on keeping their costs at a minimum as they build up to paying their student loans back. Now, on the other hand, there are situations where it would make more sense to buy a home than to rent a home. The first criteria for buying a home is if you want to buy a home. Buying a home is an intensely personal decision. Even if you can afford it, and even if it makes logical sense, if you don't want to buy a house, then maybe it's a better idea to rent for now until you feel like you're in a place emotionally to buy a home. But if you're wanting to make that big step and purchase your very own home, you want to make sure that you are prepared to afford the monthly payments, the home maintenance, and the additional costs of buying a home. These additional costs can include fees, insurance, and taxes, so be sure that you're prepared when the bill comes. Closing costs alone range between 2 and 6% of your home's purchase price. You also want to have a good down payment, ideally 20%. Why 20%? Well, a 20% down payment will mean that you avoid private mortgage insurance payments or PMI. However, it is possible to buy with a 5 to 10% down payment. That can work too, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. But it's definitely better to try to save for that 20% mark. Be careful to not pay too much when you're buying your home. You don't want to become house poor by spending a big portion of your total income on owning a home. Research has shown that the lower the housing payment to income ratio, the happier people were in marriage. In addition, among homeowners, those with a paid off mortgage were happier in their marriages than those who didn't have their mortgages paid off. This is likely because those feelings of economic stress caused by a mortgage weren't there. So when choosing a home to buy, it's a good idea to make sure that it's a home that you can afford and you can pay off fairly quickly. Don't let the desire to keep up with the Joneses cause you to overpay. Take a look at a couple I know. After the husband finished his graduate school degree, this couple and their 4 kids decided they could move closer to family. They knew that they would likely spend the next 15 to 20 years in this area and could afford to put equity into a house through a mortgage payment. They had minimal debt and would be able to find a home to buy that wouldn't take more of their 25% take-home pay. So they decided to buy a modest home that they could fit their family into. At the end of the day, if you're wanting to have flexibility, pay off debt, or have potentially a lower cost, then your option may be to rent. On the other hand, if you're looking to live somewhere for a long time, want to buy a home, and can afford all the things that come with it, then your best option will probably be to buy. Either way, you'll want to make sure your housing payment, be it rent or mortgage, is less than 25% of your take-home income. If you guys enjoyed this video and are interested in all things business and personal finance, take a second and hit that subscribe button. It literally means the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.